All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Amanda Johnson. Amanda, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I am looking forward to this. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Joe Graham because Joe was the one that introduced you and I. And I'll tell you what, man, I love Joe. He is such a good guy and he's got such a huge heart. And anytime Joe says, Kevin, I want you to meet so and so, or I think you should talk with so and so because they'd be a great guest for your podcast. I'm just like, okay, I'm all in.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and what a testament right there to the power of right relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about. And so, Joe, if you happen to see this, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you. And Amanda, I would just like to start by just I want to go back a little bit because you weren't always an entrepreneur, and I want to just kind of dig back into your backstory a little bit and find out, well, how did we get here? How did we get here to right here today, where now you are an entrepreneur doing amazing things? And how did you get introduced to the entrepreneurial world and even finding out that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I love this question because the first time I was asked this question, it took me a minute. I actually was raised with entrepreneurial grandparents.
Oh, wow.
One of them I sort of watched very closely, and the other one I didn't have a very long time with him before he passed. But it's sort of in my DNA, which accounts for the little bit of a rebellious spirit when I was younger, right? There's us entrepreneurs, we always sort of see a problem and think, well, I could fix that. Why hasn't anyone fixed that?
Sure. Yeah,
um,
right.
but I really did think, I was going to be a journalist. At the end of high school, I'd figured out I was a good writer. I had a lot of great feedback from my teachers, and I was going to be a Christian journalist. That was my plan. Got to the university, and the first little pinball interaction with my career happened where I was asked to be part of this honors program, which is like a classic books program. And it was there that I really began to, I would say, earn my beliefs that had been handed to me.
Okay.
I hadn't really been taught how to think critically or feel in a big way, feel greatly. And so I got the opportunity for 4.5 years to sort of wrestle with all of these great ideas and stories that had formed our civilization. And about halfway through, I decided, I really want to get to the teens. I'd rather get to teens and help them think critically and really wrestle with some of these ideas before they're out in college on their own by themselves, disconnected from their family of origin, maybe a little mad at them. And, help them to sort of think through this and figure out the process, an approach that was going to work for them moving forward. So I became a history teacher, got into that system and bounced right out. It was, I have so much respect for the great teachers that I have met across my lifetime, especially the ones who are working inside of a system that is as tough as our system is here. Um, I got the classroom with all of the gangbangers and drug dealers and all the kids that nobody else in school wanted my first semester. And I was thinking, what is the logic here? Send the newbie in to what, barely survive. So I did it. I did it for about 6 months. I gave it my absolute best. And then I realized I didn't have enough inside me to give it my all every day and then show up as a good mom for my toddler at the end of the day. So I put that on pause. And right about then, I had one of my first relationships actually that made a big difference in my career. Friend of the family, starting this online writing instruction program. And she said, you have the teaching credential, you have the writing chops. It'll be great. I'll show you how to do this online. You can do it any time of the day. So when your kid is, sleeping, you can do a little bit. When he goes to bed, it was this perfect little thing that happened for me. So I helped her to build some curriculum. We got some really great results with the people that we were working with. And when I went out into the world to begin to share this amazing program, of course, I went to networking events, right? Because that's what people do, or so I was told. So I went to a networking event with a bunch of female entrepreneurs. And the feedback was, well, that's great, but I don't really want you to teach me how to write well. I need you to fix what I've written because I've written websites and brochures and articles and manuscripts, and they're not landing. And I don't know why. So I opened this little side business, and that's where I met one of the most important people in my entire career, my first client, and just figured out, how I was going to help these individuals really get clear on what their message was, who their audience was, and how to engage them. And, quickly found that story was the answer, and story was also the answer to the question why most people weren't finishing their books. And
Wow.
it took me, I always say I kidnapped them with some consent, invited them to a retreat where they couldn't get distracted by all of their other obligations. And I figured out, oh, okay, their old stories are the reason why they're not really able to do this, even though they've written doctor's theses and master's, like award-winning, overachieving entrepreneurs and helping professionals who just couldn't get this thing done. So
Yeah.
eventually I figured out I'm just going to help them from the beginning.
Hmm. So when was that you had this experience? How many years ago was that?
First client in 2006. So
2006.
almost
Okay.
20 years.
Almost 20 years ago. Yeah. And so now we fast forward today.
Mhm.
So what does your business look like today and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my business is mostly a retreat model, community model,
Okay.
because I found that that's really what busy, wildly successful individuals need is time
Just to
away.
get out of their day-to-day space.
Yeah, all of they need a good excuse to say, hey, I'm out for 3 days, 7 days. I'm focused 100% on this because they know how to focus. They know how to get things done and achieve goals. But it's one of those things that always gets pushed to the back burner. Oh, I can do that, next week, next year. And then all of a sudden, 5 or 10 years have gone by. And what's missing? I think that it's setting time aside and also being in community because kind of like entrepreneurship, I feel like authorship is another niche of entrepreneurship. Not every entrepreneur writes a book to establish their authority. And so, you know how they always say entrepreneurs can be very, very lonely, right? Because
Oh
we're
yeah.
working from home and we're not in our cubicles with everybody and no water cooler experiences unless we're really intentional. Well, I think that gets exacerbated when someone decides to write because then they have the bigger questions of, well, who am I to write a book and how does one do this? And,
Mhm.
do I tell people I'm doing this and the accountability? And it just becomes this really interesting web of challenges for them mentally. And so having a community where everybody is sort of in that same soup of, does this matter? How much of my story do I tell? How do I really engage this audience? All of those questions, people just move so much more quickly when they're working together with others.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is an example of a client result that you have helped a client get that you are incredibly proud of? And we don't have to share names or anything, but
Sure.
what's a result like that?
Well, I have two different types, and I can share examples for
Okay.
both. The first one is these individuals who say, this is about 15-20% of my business. They show up in my world and they say, wow, retreat model looks great, but actually I need this done in 3 months and published in another three. And so I think, okay, I'm put on my running shoes, right? Because this person, unless there's something that they're obviously avoiding, this is somebody who, this one in particular launched, I believe it was last year, arrived and said, I have to do this in 3 months because I'm franchising my business in six. So I needed to be published and become part of that process.
Oh,
And so, the retreat model, the communal experience, that wasn't her thing. She knew everything that there was to know about how to block her time, how to make it happen. So we did. We helped her to write the book, and I think it was less than 3 months. And then another 3 months, she was published.
okay.
And that is, like I said, this sort of 15-20% of my clients who just come in with that sort of need. The other work that I really love to do is with entrepreneurs and helping professionals who tend to have some big story that they sometimes don't realize was the reason that they decided to become whatever they decided to become in the first place.
Okay.
So a good example of this, one of my all-time favorite stories, she she arrived, and at the beginning of my career I sort of figured out the oracle thing. Like I really need to figure out how to help people to see and claim their own story that's going to get in the way, instead of me hearing it and watching it and trying to lead them to it across time. It was not always the best thing. And so I had this intuitive exercise, and she figured out that it was going to be her marriage that was going to be the toughest thing between her and the destination of a published book. To her, this made absolutely no sense. And I saw it on her face, like absolute true confusion when at the end of this exercise. Argued with me. She started writing her book, which was about her work, which was being a social worker who works in high conflict divorces. Okay. And helps the judge sort out who do the children end up with, what's the best case for the kids. And so she said, I've always wanted to write a book since I was a kid. Okay. But the one I'm thinking about right now is for my career, and I don't want it to be dry because, people have to come to these evaluations with me, and I don't want it to be, here's what to bring and what not to bring. That's stupid. How about I write a choose your own adventure? Do you remember those?
I do remember those. Yeah. They went to different pages of the book, depending on which way you wanted to go. Yeah.
Exactly. So what she did was she had this family, the parents and two children, and she gave both parents 3 options each, all of which sound amazing. Like they sound like the best options for your kid, but only one of them actually is. And she shows the destination of each choice. Really, really amazing, and sort of crazy to figure out through the process. Like the creative process was wild. But what was even more wild was, as she was writing this, she was writing the family quite unfairly, let's say.
Okay.
So this was going to be really good for the women who were like, yeah, and he did this and he did that, right? But all of the men were going to be like, what? She didn't do anything. And so I was trying to help her figure out this fairness thing. And it occurred to me, husband was going to be in between her and the destination of this book. And she could not get this character right. And so I started to wonder, is this person she's writing her husband? Right? Because we write what we know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I tested it out with readers, and they were like, no way would I put this in front of a male reader. This has to be changed. I gave her all of this feedback, and we wrestled for about 18 months. I was always trying to help her to see how this character that she was writing and the character she complained about in all of our coaching sessions were like one and the same. And she truly didn't know, couldn't see. And then one day I got the phone call, and she said, did you know I was writing my story the whole time? And I said, yeah, I had a clue. And I tried to show you for about 18 months. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. And I pointed to all of the different retreats and different things that we had. Remember this chapter, remember that chapter. But she just didn't have enough safety in herself. It was almost like writing the character out helped her to really see the character that she was working with and know exactly how to move forward in her life once she woke up. Yeah. When she let herself see the truth of what was happening. And she's written about this in our book, You Can't Make This Story Up. So such a powerful, powerful story. And eventually realized that all of the stuff that was going on in the marriage was generational, and has been able to sort of break that generational story in her family for her own kids.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story. And is that the name of the title of the book? You Can't Make This Story Up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to have to go check that out now.
It's really fun. After so many years of seeing that people had been stuck around their story, and that there was it could have been a wounded story, something that they just didn't want to talk about. But sometimes it was, they'd been a little dimmed in their childhood, or they'd gotten in trouble every time they got really visible. So this idea of going out in the world and establishing their authority and becoming very visible, even though it was for a great cause and they're, to fulfill their purpose, there was always this one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake experience that was happening. Yeah. And so I had to figure out what the brake was. And so after about well, that must have been about 15 years of these stories. And finally, with her story, I said, how about we just help other creatives and entrepreneurs learn that this feeling of being stuck, like there might be something more than it's not organized right, it's not the right time in my career, I'm not a good writer, all of the things that we tell ourselves. But really, I think that those are our ego's really convenient way of keeping us from changing the real story. And because it's hard work, that lady worked for 2 or 3 years writing the book, publishing the book, becoming visible, doing the work in her own marriage. This is 3 or 4 years later, and she's still rewriting that. I mean, it's no small thing. So if our souls sort of know that that's what's coming, of course they're trying. How can we do that and keep doing what we're doing in the world? Well, my answer is write it, process it first, do it with a partner who knows what you're up to and believes in your story, and do it in community, because something about the communal experience really accelerates it.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story. I I can see, I can only imagine how inspiring your work has got to be for you after hearing that story, and just like how awesome is it to be able to hold that kind of space for the people that you serve and stuff, for just this transformation to take place. And they're thinking, oh, I'm just coming to her to get some help with a book. And it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so
and as an entrepreneur, I had coaches along the way who told me you can't tell people what you're actually up to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
You
and
just get to let them experience it, huh?
I heard what they were saying, but eventually the work became so powerful that I just decided to tell people up front, like, if you're here, if you've been sent to me, if you have started and stopped other programs and not made it, and you've somehow magically, synchronistically found yourself talking to me, chances are that there is a story, and I have to have total buy-in before I ask them to step into the program, because it's a 12-month program and I don't want them to be blindsided by the work. So I have little events and things that I do about bi-monthly. They're like, we call them virtual community campfires, and we have people come and we give them a little experience of what it's like, some writing prompts, some talking to other people and telling their stories and uncovering something that might be keeping them stuck and creating an action plan for the next 2 months. And so we give people little tastes of the work so that they can see,
Okay.
it is safe, it is supported. And when it's the right time, they're ready to step in.
Yeah. So now I'm curious because you mentioned it's a 12-month program. You also mentioned 3 and 7 day retreats. How many retreats does a person go to in the course of the 12 months and is that pretty much the only place they're writing their book, or are they writing book outside of that too and stuff?
Good question. So remember, this has been refined over 15 years of this sort of retreat model work. So what I figured out works is we need it in person, and we need it about quarterly. We spend 7 days together quarterly in person in a cozy little space. We usually rent out a nice big Airbnb so that it can be very communal, not in like conference settings or those sorts of things, and uninterrupted. And we spend the first 3 days working on what I call story saving, because I'm not a therapist and it's not really therapy, but it sort of feels like that when you're in the middle of it. So we have them sort of digging through their stories and figuring out what's stopping them for the first 3 days. And then we take a day and we go to the spa together, or we do something fun in nature together and just sort of let everything recalibrate. And then we have 3 days of work. And my goal at that first retreat is always to get someone their first chapter. If I can get them to figure out that they could write a chapter in 3 days and sometimes one day, then all of a sudden that high performer kicks in and they go, oh, shoot, this doesn't have to take me 5 or 10 years. I could actually, if I did this, we have quarterly retreats, and then we have every month that we're not in person together, we have 3 days online together where it's basically just get in, clear the energy, and get into the writing. Raise your hand when you get stuck, because people get stuck on tenses or the way to move into flashbacks or all these little details. We hop in a breakout room, we get them unstuck and back into momentum. And then Tuesdays, I open up my Zoom, and there's coaching sessions in the morning, co-working throughout the day, and then we have a little marketing session for people who have already gotten through the process of publishing or are working through publishing or trying to sort out how to launch the book.
Okay. Wow. Wow. Very cool. This is really unique, and I'm fascinated by it, Amanda. And so, well, okay, so we definitely got a little bit of context set here, and now listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you do, and I'm sure some of them are thinking like, I want to talk with her. And so we'll make sure you don't get left hanging and stuff. But I want to switch gears just a little bit. And so I'm going to reiterate the question that I want to ask you so the listeners get to hear it too and stuff. But Amanda, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, relationships have been the most important thing. In fact, when I find myself getting ready to do something new, like try out something new in my business. Right now, I'm in the process of launching a personal brand, and it's that same game of like, I don't want to do all of these tasks. Here's all of the list of things. I'm like, where are the people? Right? Like it's oh, for me, it's always been about relationship, not the actual to-dos. So the first one who entered my world and is absolutely a before and after, her name is Ursula Menches,
Okay.
and she was a sales coach. She had just opened up her business a few years before, had written a book, and when we're talking about high performing, she taught me how to lace up my running shoes. When I first met her, she said, I'm launching my first book in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Maybe she gave me three. I need a workbook. Can you help me create a workbook that I can have completely ready and printed to sell next to these books at my little tea house event in a few weeks? And I was like, I mean, sure. And it. We figured it out. It got done. She sold so many books and made so much money at her little launch. And we became fast friends. And my favorite thing about Ursula, and actually, this was the missing piece of her whole book,
Okay.
was this piece about how she connected with people. There was, I looked at her manuscript and I said, there's something missing here. We're working on second edition. What is it that's missing? I don't know, Amanda. This is everything that I do. Well, I had the opportunity to network with her. She was at that female entrepreneur networking group, and I watched her, and I could not believe the way that she connected with people. It was true problem solving, service oriented. I don't care whether I'm the one to serve you or not. I'm going to make sure it's a personality match. It's really going to solve your problems. And so that was the missing piece. It was something that was so natural to her, but something that I wasn't natural to me. I mean, I was an introvert, and that was something I need to learn. So we put it in the book, and then we just had so much fun for about 5 or 6 years. I think we lived in the same basic neighborhood and ran in the same circles. And we go to networking meetings and we make a game out of it. Like, today, I'm going to sell this many contracts for you. And we would just, because I had experienced her work and she had experienced mine. And so it was just about creating those relationships. Oh, you need to talk to Amanda. Oh, we need to talk to Ursula. And that's the way that we both built really amazing businesses in a few years.
That is so awesome. So you would go to these networking groups, and if I'm understanding you right, you guys would just go around talking each other up, each of you talking the other one up and stuff. And,
Yeah.
I mean, that is what I do. And I totally get, because I love doing that stuff because I know these entrepreneurs who are doing just such amazing things, and yet they won't talk themselves up because they just feel weird about trying to self-promote or whatever.
Yeah.
But man, they're such rock stars. And I'm like, I will talk you up.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
And that, and like, man, I love being that guy, you know. And
Well,
so
it's so much more fun. And I think that we're made to belong. We're made to be in community. And the way that we do that and have for millennia is by figuring out how to be reciprocal. It's about, you might think it might not feel like a sacrifice for someone who doesn't want to self-promote, but it sort of is. You have 2 hours that you're at this networking meeting and you never talk about your own services. That sounds like a sacrifice, except every time that I did it, I came out with a lot more contracts than if I'd gone in and tried to promote my own stuff, right? And so there's something about that is, I think it's just built into our DNA and it's so nourishing. And it's one of the reasons why I look at all of the other fixes and formulas and one size fits all things. All you need to do is this for lead gen and all you need to, and I think, no, I just need to find the right person. I just need to find someone else that I can promote, and there can be some sort of reciprocity and some sort of mutual gain. Those are the people that I'm always excited to meet.
yeah, yeah. I hear the term marketing funnel. It just kind of makes me cringe, you know. And so, because it just doesn't feel right, you know. And
Yeah,
but I
that's something that people slide down, right? It's
yeah,
like there's
yeah,
a there's something slippery about it that
yeah,
is
yeah,
actually slippery.
yeah. So, I'm just thinking about how I want to frame this. Well, let me just ask you this: what's next from here for you? What's the vision going forward for you?
More of this. You
Mhm.
know, after about 10 years of helping individuals self-publish, I started to get a lot of individuals who were looking at hybrid publishing and decided that they needed an imprint, for their position and their status in their industry, they needed an imprint. They needed that sort of stamp of approval on their content. And so they would go out and try these different hybrid houses, and then they would call me to come save it because
Come
their
save it, huh?
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There are hybrid houses that don't have people who care about brand. This client who had 15 years of brand recognition and trust and loyalty and a really nice following. The cover that they put together for her would have completely disrupted the trust with all of the people who were following her.
Wow.
It was amazing to me. So I would always jump in and become these publishing house's worst nightmare for a little bit, get the project back on track. And in between, I send off the email, I walk out my door and I slam things around the kitchen because why should anyone have to go through that, right? After they've been through oftentimes a transformational experience of writing, they're already nervous about getting into the world. Now they have this machine hiccup in the middle with people who just don't care. It would make me so mad. So after a few years of listening to me curse in the kitchen, my son said, Mom, how about we just build a publishing house? We'll just figure it out and create our own imprint.
How old was your son when he said that?
19.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, he's
That's
always been an entrepreneur. That one, so he was 3. I think he was maybe 4 when he was hustling people at our garage sale. And I was like, oh, look at you. Family DNA. But yeah, so I told him, I don't really have time to figure that out, but if you want to, I'll partner with you in it. And so now he's my business partner, and my youngest sister is our creative designer.
wow.
And so we have this little publishing house, Saved by Story, hybrid boutique. A lot of the people who do the writing process will eventually move through the publishing, but it's not always the right fit. So we do a lot of education and empowerment for people who are ready to publish but don't know the right route and don't know how to go through it without giving all of their power away and ending up with a product that they're not happy with.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that work. So just more of what we've been doing.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. You're kind of like me in that regard. I just want to do more of what I'm already doing, bigger impact,
Yes, yes. Well, the bigger impact for me is on the personal side because of all the I call it narrative resilience work that people do when they're in the process of writing, writing community and interacting with story. There's something really powerful that happens there. And I always get to the end of my retreats and think, why are there only a few people in this room? Because I only have so many people that I can help through the content, right? And so my dream is expanding that transformational work through a personal brand and doing speaking and facilitation to take all of those narrative tools and skills and infuse them into places that need them, like the education system and the mental health space.
Okay.
And well, pretty much every other arena could benefit from some narrative resilience right now.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, for anybody that's listening to this right now and going, man, Kevin, I really love Amanda. I love who she is. I love how she shows up. And man, some of what she shared is just really speaking to me. And maybe she might be able to help me, or maybe they know somebody else. They're like, man, I need to tell them about Amanda. And for anybody that's thinking like that, any websites, any resources we can share with them?
Yes, the website is savedbystory.house.
Okay.
And if they hit /foreshadows, FORE shadows, like you get when you're reading a good story or watching a good story, there's a whole bunch of free content over there that will help anyone at any stage. I
Okay.
have an idea, but I'm not sure if it's the right idea, all the way to, am I on the right track for publishing?
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Any last thing that you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
You know, uh, I would say on the topic of relationships, for those who are struggling to work through the content and get the basics down, there I always think in terms of safety and structure. We call it the content cocoon, right? Because there's something there to sort of hold the process of transformation, letting everything turn into goo and then reform into something beautiful. And there's something about that that's coming up right now, that the relationships for the people who are in our personal spaces, um, pay attention to that too. Figure out how to make the people around you feel a little safer while you're on this amazing adventure of what's my message, who's my audience, how do I establish authority. Because what I found is that most of our family members really want to support, but if we don't tell them how, then
Yeah,
they don't know
that's right. For sure. For
how.
sure. Well, Amanda, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and to share from your heart. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I am like really excited to share this with a lot of other entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, this was awesome.